Leafs fans, welcome back to Game Over. I am your host, Lauren, as always. And on the other side of the stream, we have the one and only Tara Slone from the Sharks. Welcome, Tara. I know that you have been on
Hey,
Game Over before, but not with Toronto. Is that right?
that is correct. I did a Flames game kind of early on. So,
Okay.
uh,
My
yeah.
condolences, because they were not very good last year. And luckily, the Leafs managed to scrape out a win, which is great. Historically, when we've had a bigger name guest, which you actually happen to fall into the category of, the
Wow.
Leafs end up losing terribly. And it was close. It was very nearly that tonight. But the Leafs pull out a big win. Callie Yarncrook with a 2-goal night. Matthews with a 2-goal night. 6-5 in Toronto to beat Tampa Bay. So we're going to talk about the game. We're going to take your questions, and we're going to talk all about hockey. We're going to talk about some other things. We're going to talk about Tara, and we're going to talk all of that here on Game Over by SDPN. So, Tara, I know that you're not a Leafs fan. I know you probably don't get an opportunity to watch a lot of the Leafs. So, as an objective opinion, on a scale of 1 to 10, how accurately did you predict the end of the game at, let's say, the end of the first period?
I think I knew it was going to obviously, yeah, I was pretty certain it was going to end up in a tie and going to overtime. Sort of seems to be the way. And listen, I have a lot of sympathy for fans and for teams that are desperately in need of a win. And, luckily for Toronto, it went their way tonight. But, I hate to be a walking hockey cliche, but it's clear. I know the whole, I've been reading up and I do follow enough. But being on the West Coast, obviously I'm focused on my team.
Yeah.
But I know, yes, they need more scoring from the depth forwards. I understand all the things, all of these new faces need to actually start to produce. What just struck me is you have to, what is it? You have to play a 60-minute game. And that's not what happened. They got lucky, and obviously they get bailed out by the big guns.
Absolutely. And not only that, but some big goaltending later on in the game. Obviously, we're going to talk about goal scoring and lack thereof that can exist, which I know you're unfortunately familiar with. And of course, the dichotomy of having a goalie, which on paper seems like a good goalie, and having them turn into unfortunate Swiss cheese. So, yeah, obviously, all of those defensive woes are there. And the Leafs do manage to scrape out a win in arguably a game that at the beginning of the game they had no chance of winning and they didn't really deserve to win. But they do what they're able to do against Tampa sometimes, which is pull out a win when maybe they're not going to be able to. So let's talk about it. Right from the beginning of the game, Nyes gets the Leafs on the board right away, which was great. Matthew Nyes is one of our obviously our highest end rookies. He was a later in I think he was like a second round pick, and there are a lot of people that are saying that if the draft was to be redone for that year, he would easily fall within the top 20. And it's easy to see tonight, right? Like he's a big
Mhm.
guy. He's like 6'2" and 21 years old, not playing like a 21-year-old, and he gets it in right from Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner to start off the game. And the Tampa Bay Lightning do what unfortunately a lot of teams have been able to do, which is capitalize on the Leafs right after the Leafs score a goal. And the barrage came quick and it came hard. Hedman, Kucherov, and then Braden Point to finish off the fourth, leading to the Leafs actually being booed off the ice as they left for the first
That feels
intermission.
great. Yeah, I mean, listen, the three guys you just mentioned are lethal,
Yeah.
and we know that. And so,
Yep.
you better be playing your best opposite them.
Absolutely. And even though, on the West Coast, you might not get a chance to see them all the time, you get a different kind of opportunity when you maybe watch East Coast games a little bit, right? I mean, I'm sure it's what, 3 o'clock in the afternoon when the game starts for you? Like, not
Yeah,
a lot of,
today started at 4, but I mean, the nice thing is you can watch a full night of hockey,
right.
and watch the East and the West. But yeah, I mean, but listen, I've only been here for just over a year, so I followed the East plenty. Um, so it's
Yeah,
just, yeah,
you're
the West is new to me.
yeah, the East Coast is a different kind of slog. The West Coast is quickly becoming its own kind of monster, though. Even though a lot of people kind of discredit the West Coast, the last couple of years, especially with Vegas taking over, and some teams actually now having a final upswing. Like the Kraken have been like a slow rise, but they got farther into the playoffs than anybody was looking to give them credit for last year. And I think that those teams are going to continue to take steps. And I think that the Sharks, even though, last season and this season might not be their best, the fact of the matter is, and I talked about this yesterday on the Over the Glass podcast that I was on, that I know that you've been on before, that all it takes is one good season for the tide to turn, and then all of a sudden, the Sharks are back in it. It was only a couple years ago that the Sharks were far into the playoffs, right? Like, it's amazing
Absolutely.
how quickly the pendulum swings one way to the other, right?
Well, a lot of people use Colorado as an example. They barely won any games, and look what happened.
Yeah.
So, it's obviously it's very painful for everybody involved. I walk, I'm underneath the bowels of the rink doing rinkside sometimes, and I can't even. I walk past the GMs, and I just I want to avert my eyes. It's just really rough, because I don't think anybody expected to be on top of the world, but nobody expected this. So, looking forward to that time when the tide does turn.
Absolutely. And, the tide turns with the Sharks. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah, I mean, listen, the Leafs are not maybe having the start that a lot of us hoped and expected that they would have. But so, in fairness, like the Leafs have been pretty hard, the Leaf fans have been pretty hard on the team because we have these super high expectations, even though they've kind of gaslit us into believing that there's no real reason for that to happen. But, I really do think that a couple seasons or a couple games can really sway the momentum of a whole season. And it's still November, right? Like, I'm not saying, the Sharks are like my dark horse to make the playoffs, but you get a couple picks, make a couple trades. Next year, you guys have so much cap space coming off the books that there's going to be so much opportunity for good change to happen that I don't see how good change doesn't come. You guys have a great location. I know we're getting off topic, everybody. We're going to get back to the game.
Yes,
but
sorry.
No. Don't apologize at all. Because the fact of the matter is, us Leaf fans, we criticize the Leafs in games where they're even winning, right? Like, the Leafs win tonight, and I still have so many negative notes. And
right.
It's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a weakness.
Tough market?
Yes. Well, tough. That's putting it delicately.
Yeah.
It's a blind spot that we don't seem to recognize that there are other teams that are actually struggling really hard at the bottom of the standings. And we think, oh, it's the Leafs and, why isn't our team good? But it's not necessarily the tire fire that we think it is.
No, it is certainly not.
No, certainly not. And
confirm.
Yeah. Yeah. And even though the Leafs get booed off, to end the first period, and, our goalie gets pulled with 5 minutes to go and he was really frustrated. And, we all feel for that because no matter what team you're on, even if you're the Tampa Bay Lightning, even if you're Boston, at some point your goalie's been pulled when they haven't been playing well. And unfortunately, Samsonov has not been playing well so far. In the last, the last 7 periods, he's let 7 goals in on 17 shots. Like he's had a rough outing. So
that's not great.
The Leafs end the first period not doing good. And then it's like a different team comes back in the second. Right from the beginning, the second line of Tyler Bertuzzi, John Tavares, and William Nylander, get a really good opportunity. Sam Benoit gets a chance, and then the revolution comes back, right? Matthews gets a goal. Matthews gets another goal before the end of the second, and the Leafs end up ending the second period only 1 goal down. And it was like a different team came on the ice in the second period. I don't know if it's just a case of, the team has a goalie that they feel confident in, and so they feel like they can make a little bit better plays. It just looked like a different team from the end of the first to the second. Tara, do you see the same thing I did, or am I just like smoking the Leafs?
No, absolutely. Here? And I do think, listen, those intermissions, I'd love to be a fly on the wall because sometimes as a coach, kind of lighting that fire. But there's some veteran leadership on this team too. And so it could be, one of the players just saying like, okay, we're better than this. Who knows? But my theory is that there was quite a pep talk and a rallying cry. Because the energy just completely shifted.
Yeah, right from the beginning of the second period, it seemed like the Leafs just decided to show up, which is an ongoing problem that the Leafs have had. Again, we're talking about like small world problems here. This is a win, and I'm like, oh, they were so bad in the first period. But sometimes you win games that you don't deserve to, and sometimes you lose games you deserve to win. And so for the Leafs to come out and push back at the second, even though they don't tie it until the third period, it really felt like they got their feet back in the game, which was so good to see. And then the third period comes out. Calle Jarnkrok comes out, getting an excellent play by Max Domi and Nick Robertson. Nick Robertson, who, Tara, I don't know if you know anything about Nick Robertson. He's one of our rookies, has had a bad string of luck when it comes to injury the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, I know of the Robertsons,
right,
that's for sure.
Right. Yeah. And so he comes out and he looked so good all game. He seemed to really get in the passing lanes. He was doing a couple really good zone holds for the Leafs, and it was just really good to see. And then Marner gets another goal, 8 seconds afterwards, and all of a sudden the Leafs are on top. And just like that, pendulum swings the other way, right? And all of a sudden Tampa's chasing the game again. I mean, everybody knows the most dangerous lead in hockey is 4-1. Right?
Some would say, yeah, some would say 4-1.
Yeah.
Some would say by 2. Some would say a 2-goal lead is the most dangerous. But you're right. I think
2 goals? Really? I don't know if I've heard that one. Oh. That's clearly
I could have just made it up.
That's an upper circle West Coast thing. It must be an upper coast West Coast thing.
What it is. It's a NorCal thing.
Yes, that's at NorCal. Oh my gosh, don't kill me. But the Leafs end the first period with boos, and by halfway through the third period, Wool was getting go Leafs go chants going. And it was just as soon as Marner gets that 5-4 goal, it felt like everyone was so jazzed in the building. And unfortunately, Tampa Bay does what they do, and they tie the game with 2 minutes and 25 seconds to go. It's really unbelievable. Like, even though Tampa is a little bit of an older team, they play so well, like all the time. Even though tonight they lost, they just look so connected as a unit. They know where each other's going to be without looking. And that feels like something that both of our teams are struggling with. Like, both the Leafs and the Sharks recently have really had a hard time knowing where the other players are going to be without quadruple checking over their shoulder.
Well, listen, Tampa has its core intact. They know how to play, they know how to compete, and they know how to win. The Leafs have more of a core, certainly, than the Sharks do. The Sharks are just like a whole bunch of new people thrown together. And our coach, David Quinn, has certainly said this isn't a team yet. So that would explain it. But I guess going back to the Tampa example, Tampa's a team, and so, yeah, you're right. Like, it's an aging team, but they're still a team, and they still understand who needs to play what role when.
Yeah. There's no question about what everybody's job is or what people's duties are. There's so few missed assignments on Tampa, I find. Like, if I try and take a step back sometimes and just watch, it's hard when I'm going to stream after the game because I have to take so many notes. But the other night I was able to watch the game against Buffalo, and I'm sure you probably missed that game, but it was really...
I was in the press. Yeah, I was getting ready for my game.
Right. Well, I found that it was really interesting, at least for me, to take a step back and watch how the other team is playing, just because it feels like I get more answers, a lot of answers that I wasn't really expecting about how my team plays, in watching the reads that the other team plays against my team. Again, I know that's kind of meta braining everything, but
no. I mean, I think that's, super helpful
for sure. And I know that you grew up a Habs fan, so you didn't necessarily grow up a Sharks fan, but I'm sure that it's different. And this was actually leading into my first question here. I'm sure that it's different being in California and watching hockey than it is north of the border, right? Like, it just is a different breed, and I'm sure it's different all over the States. But you were born in Montreal, you grew up in Halifax, you lived in Toronto at one point, and so you've experienced multiple Canadian markets. And so, how has it been for you going to NorCal and seeing how different it is?
I know, it's so obnoxious.
I know.
The first Sharks game I went to, I was really excited because, this is, yes, a relatively new hockey market. The Sharks didn't exist until 1991. This has been a pretty spoiled market, though. The fans there was a lot of success for a lot of years. But it's just a really different demographic here. It's in Canada, I would say, and probably in the Northeast. People are generational hockey fans and generational season ticket holders, and it's more corporate. Here, there's a lot of youth. There's a lot of racial diversity. There's obviously a big Hispanic population here, and it looks really different. It's it's one of the best rinks when it's full and when it's exciting. And anybody coming in, any players who have played here in big games will tell you, like, it's because it's on the older side, I guess. It's not, how like, I get my Rogers mixed up. Rogers Place in Edmonton is like, those newer rinks can be a bit muted sound wise. There's just noise bouncing off the walls at SAP Center. So it's like, when it's loud, it's really exciting. But yeah, I mean, obviously the fever of hockey isn't the same. It is for the fans who are in themselves rabid, but hockey is not number one here, and it's not number two.
Right.
It's not number three.
I was gonna say it might not even be in the top three.
Yeah, no, it's not. And so, you have to work harder to grow the game here, which I think the Sharks really do a wonderful job of outreach and being in the community and having, pads all across the area where people can learn to skate. And, it's harder to find hockey stories, but they're there. They're there to be unearthed. And and I gotta say, when I walk out of that rink and it's much warmer and there's palm trees, I don't hate that. I did hometown hockey for 8 seasons. I put in my time in the minus 30s.
You paid your dues for sure. And as someone that has lived in Canada their whole life and has only actually been to California once, I get the whole appeal of palm trees now. And it's funny, my wife is actually she's actually from New Mexico. And so when we drove through California, we went on this big road trip. She was like, "What's with you and palm trees?" I was like, "You don't understand. Like, this is not a thing. Like, I go to like botanical gardens to see one palm tree in Toronto. Like, I don't blame you at all for going to California. There are certainly worse places that you could cover hockey, right?"
Yeah, I mean, listen, my life took this turn, and luckily I got the only hockey related jobs I could possibly get here. So in this world of tech, I work in hockey, which is amazing. So yeah, but no complaints when it comes to the weather. That's for sure.
That's definitely for sure. Before we get any further, I'm going to do a really quick ad read, everybody. So just hang on with me. Tara's going to be right back. Our sponsor this season so far is BetStamp. So the NHL is heating up, and there has never been a better time to get in on the action. Whether you're looking to hammer on Austin Matthews' anytime goal or ride the puck line with the Montreal Canadiens, our partner at Sign Up Expert want to make sure you are ready to sweat your bets with one of the best. Sign Up Expert is looking to hook up our listeners with one of the newest sportsbook available in Canada, Betano. Betano is home to one of the best odds when it comes to betting on the NHL and offers unique markets, including virtual soccer and basketball. All you have to do to get started is scan this QR code right on top of the screen or click the description to register and place that first bet. If you thought the Vancouver Canucks have been the surprise of the season so far, wait until you try Betano. Don't walk, run to check out Betano today. Scan that QR code again or hit the link in the description to get started and start sweating your bets with the best. Always remember to bet responsibly and within your means. Viewers must be 19 plus to sign up. Please play it responsibly. So yeah, like I said, California is certainly a different place to play and a different hockey demographic, which is something I'm actually really glad that you brought up because it was actually one of my questions for this segment. Austin Matthews is from Arizona. Well, he was born in California.
He was born in California,
but grew up in Arizona. And Matthew Nye is also from California, or from Arizona, and Tage Thompson from the Buffalo Sabres. So even though there's maybe not as overwhelming amounts of influence in terms of influence on youth involving hockey in the Southwest, it's definitely a growing trend, right? And even last night there was the player from on Boston, their new rookie. He's like the first player that's ever been drafted from Louisiana, which is banana cakes to me. Yeah. I didn't even know there was places in the States that like don't have players in the NHL. I mean, it makes sense, right? I don't imagine that Baton Rouge is overwhelming with hockey rinks, but it's interesting that only now are some of these demographics being tapped into. And I'm actually like really excited about the idea of hockey becoming, I hate to say it, less of just a white person sport. Like, guys, we need some different colors in the locker rooms. We need some different people. And those people are already in the league. We already have lots of players of color, but not nearly enough. And all diversity does is make us better as a sport, as people, and as teams, it makes all of us better to have people from different walks of life, from different experiences, because in my opinion, and maybe you agree with me here, Tara, everybody can teach you something. And the more diversity you have in your life, the better everybody is for it.
Yeah, I mean that I think anybody who knows me knows I feel exactly the same way. And I'm always, I'm kind of baffled when um sort of efforts to grow the game on the NHL side seem to be going backwards, because really the only hope, again, like down here, hockey's not number one,
Mm-hmm.
but there are tons of people who just need to get their feet in skates. There's lots of opportunity to grow the game. There's untapped resources and untapped markets, but you have to market it differently.
Yep.
Sometimes teach people differently. I was speaking to a gentleman named Mahal who has a show that is geared towards South Asians, Indians in particular. And he said, we have to really break things down in a very rudimentary way. Like, so, he's growing all this interest in the Indian community in the Bay Area, but you have to do it differently. You can't assume that people know even anything.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I absolutely look forward to hockey being a great mosaic of humanity.
Yeah, and I know that there's a lot of things that, like I know in Canada they have like the Mandarin shows and the Mandarin translations, and they also have the same one with Hockey Night in Canada with Hunter Ryan Singh. I believe he still does like the shows in other languages as well, and that's one of the very small things. I mean, Canada's you're from here. You know how many people are not from here, so especially with new Canadians, at least in Canada, one of the things that we need to do is we need to make it more accessible to everybody. Like hockey in and of itself is an expensive sport to begin with, let alone when you're trying to buy your kid new stuff every year, right? And I know in Canada we have things like Play It Again Sports, and there are things in place to try and make it a little bit easier. But if we need to make it easier, we need to make it more accessible. And so it's interesting. I'm glad that you're so involved with it, and it was part of the reason I was so excited with having you on the show. Is I know that you've championed not only women in sports and the queer community as well, but people of all communities, even if you're not necessarily a part of it. And it's it's one of the things that I think you've done really well for hockey. And I'm not trying to pump your tires or anything, but we need more people like you in hockey, because so many of the existing problems are because they're old ideas in old minds that haven't had to adjust because they're comfortable in their shoes and they like their own shoes too much to try on someone else's. And so I totally agree with you in the fact that this sport is only going to get better, and all of us are better when we have more people from other places to teach us new things. Because I'm so jazzed for the first Korean player to come over and play in the NHL. Like that's going to be so awesome for the sport, and it's only going to make hockey better all around the world, because the NHL, while that's what we're talking about some of the NHL teams, hockey is a worldwide sport, whether we like to register it or not, right? There are Australian hockey teams. There are, the Swedish teams are huge. In Russia, it's a huge thing as well. And I think that hockey is my favorite sport far and away. And I think that so many people just don't know what they're missing because it's hard to get into. So one of the things that I encourage the people that I spoke to on the podcast yesterday was just trying to make their podcast as accessible to everybody as possible, to try and get more people being like, I've always wanted to watch this thing about hockey. So, kudos to you for doing such a good job.
Well, you know what? I honestly, I really credit my time on Hometown Hockey, because we started to see our own tendencies when we were seeking stories. We'd be like, wait a minute, like all of our stories are about white dudes.
Yeah.
And so we would catch ourselves, and we were admittedly we were a room of white people. But I think we had enough self-reflection among us to be like, you know what, if we're just telling stories about white dudes, we're not capturing Canada properly, right? That's not what it is. And so we went out of our way to look for, to go against our biases, really, and do the best job we could telling the story of all Canadians, because they are there. We weren't making stuff up, but you can just easily kind of, funnel it one way. And that just becomes a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely, because then all of a sudden, like you said, the whole show ends up white as the ice, right? And that's not what hockey is. It's not. There's
No.
lots of colors of the rainbow in hockey, and I'm really glad that you were able to be a part of recognizing that that bias was happening and being part of the team that righted it. So again, not to pump your tires, but like, good on you. One of my other questions that I had was, you have had the opportunity to work in a number of very different public industries. You've worked in the music industry, you worked in film and television, and you're obviously now working, you have a long history of working in hockey, like you said, with Hometown Hockey, but now working with the Sharks and NBC Sports. So as someone that's had experience over all of those very publicly and well-known, paths to go down, do you think having experience in like the music and TV industry helped you sort of navigate the weeds in the hockey industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing those industries have in common is they are quite male dominated.
Right.
So, but I mean, I guess most are. But in terms of, just being sort of public facing, developing a work ethic, for me, my music career, and I credit my bandmates in Joydrop back in the day. Like, I was just a babe in the woods. I was just I didn't realize how much work it was.
Mm-hmm.
And from the outside, I don't think people understand how hard musicians have to work. And so, for me, work ethic and sort of passion and really, really digging in, but everything just sort of led into one another for me. I just feel really fortunate. Like I was in the entertainment business, then I got the opportunity to be an entertainment reporter. Then I, really wanted to steer myself towards sports and hockey in particular, and had the opportunity to do that. So, everything, even though it seems like I have a really strange trajectory career-wise, everything has just kind of rolled into one. But yeah, I'm grateful for all of it. I've done some weird and interesting things, I guess.
It's been, as someone that followed your music career and your TV career, and obviously there's not a lot of super famous like female Canadians that are involved with hockey. There's just not, at least that aren't players, right? You're one of a very slim margin of people. And so, I think I don't want to say that you've had to reinvent yourself, but you've sort of reinvented your career at all of these different points, and you've been able to find success. And I think it's because of that work ethic that you said you had from the music industry. And, if you are watching this chat and you don't know where Tara Slone is from, she was in a wonderful band called Joydrop. They were, like I said, one of my favorite bands when I was growing up. They were lost too soon, in my opinion. But we gained you in other ways, which has been great, because it's been obviously fascinating to watch your entertainment career, like I said, go from music to being right on the television to being on television with hockey, and now you're full on working in the hockey industry. So it's been an interesting and fantastic ride watching you excel at everything that you do. So I'm super stoked to have you on here tonight. One of the other things that you have been involved in is the docuseries Top of Her Game, which again, in my opinion, was a series that was cut way too short, highlighting the highs and lows of being a female professional athlete in all different types of sports. And as the PWHL is becoming more of a thing, and that season is growing closer and closer, even though I know that California doesn't have a team yet. You must be excited, as someone that's been involved with hockey for a long time, to see this come about.
Oh my gosh, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled because it just seemed like we were at this impasse for so long. The PWHA, splintered off, and, these women really held out for the right situation. There was, I think, a lot of pressure to be like, but you guys should be playing. And they did their Dream Gap tours and, these tournaments, but they really, I think, seem to have done it right. Like, they are the first league to be starting with a collective bargaining agreement already in place. And that's how it had to be, because, after everything, all the chaos of the leagues folding, and then the PHF and all the drama, you this is your one shot to prove, I think, at this really crucial juncture when it comes to women's sport and women's sport viewership. You got one chance to get it right this time. And so it seems that way. They waited for everything to fall into place. So we'll see. Like, I think they're wise to start with 6 teams and see how it goes and grow from there. But it's going to be best on best on best on best on best. I mean, that's what you want. That's what we've all been waiting for. So yeah, I'm so excited, and I'm so excited, for the future. I'm so excited for, young people who are watching, and young girls who can say, I have somewhere to go beyond college hockey potentially, and for boys to like see women excelling at hockey and not think that we can't keep up.
Right. And it not just be like a world championship scenario, right? Like,
right.
We get best on best, but it's once a year, twice a year max if the Olympics are involved. And so, what you said about the boys, wanting the boys to see how hard the girls can play. Listen, man, I don't know how many times, like when I was growing up, I was watching Haley Wickenheiser play in the Olympics, and like far and away, she's still like my favorite female hockey player of all time. Like, I just have so much respect for her. Talk about someone that reinvented themselves, like a 4-time gold medalist, and then she's like goes and is an emergency doctor. Like, you have proven yourself once again. I really think that the PWHL, you talk about original 6 teams, ha ha ha. That's where the NHL started too. And one of the things that I really like is the fact that there are going to be, young kids that grow up and they won't, hopefully, as this league lasts, hopefully they never remember a time when there wasn't like a women's league. Right?
That's right.
You can't, there's an old Chinese prophecy, when you're thirsty, it's too late to dig a well. And it's true. In a perfect world, this league would have been created 20 years ago, and we would have as many people going into the Hockey Hall of Fame as there are men. And we're just not there yet. And so all people like you and I can do is try to bring more voices and elevate the voices that are important, and try to elevate the sport that we love so much when it involves a demographic that unfortunately hasn't got the screen time that the other main demographic gets. And I, for one, can't wait to have a couple kids and for them to see how hard it is to play, and that you can play too, even if you're a girl, and that you can have success and you can have a career as a professional athlete in a sport that is so male dominated and has been for so long.
I think it's, again, this will help change the face of hockey. So I think my request of everybody is, if you like the idea, then also, start watching, start paying attention, start amplifying, because we need this to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the only way that we can do that is by talking about it. So obviously we spent a lot of time talking about you and what's coming up and the other sides of hockey. Really quick before we jump into chat, if you want to get your questions in for Tara, please do so now. We're going to be answering those in just a quick minute. I know that you said you don't follow the Leafs, but you did grow up in Canada.
Well, I don't I follow, well, you don't, because I'm on all the Canadian hockey sites, so of course I follow the Leafs. I just I don't follow it the way I follow the Sharks at this point.
Well, I mean, that's because the Leafs don't pay you, which is reasonable. If you follow the Leafs as much as you follow the Sharks, I would be like, Tara, I think we need to talk about your time management, because my goodness. Exactly. As someone obviously that loosely follows the Leafs, we'll say loosely follows the Leafs, in comparison to last season, where do you think that they are in terms of their structure? Maybe this is just Leafs fans overly reading into it, but do you feel like the small moves that they did make over the summer, are you convinced that they're going to be better or less good in the playoffs, or maybe the same?
I think it's early. I think it's too early to tell. And I do think that they need, some of the people that could end up stepping up haven't yet. Everybody's talking about the new faces, Tyler Bertuzzi, I think in particular. There's a lot of hype about him coming in. Max Domi has potential, hasn't fulfilled it everywhere he's gone. So I think it is really early days, and goaltending has to be solid, right? Like
Sure.
that's just the bottom line. And a lot of teams are currently having that particular woe. Like you gotta
Yeah.
have that person, or if you're lucky, a tandem, but you gotta have that number one who can win games for you. So yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I think the Leafs, there's all the potential in the world. Like look at they've just got so much firepower, but
Yeah. They can, it's clear they can. They do have the ability to score their way out of problems. A little bit like the Edmonton Oilers. Maybe not to the same degree as Edmonton. I mean, as someone that lives in the West Coast, I'm sure Edmonton haunts your dreams more than it haunts mine these days. But the fact of the matter is the Leafs have the ability to turn on and be able to score goals in bunches like some other teams in the league are able to do. I know Vegas is good with that. I know Edmonton is obviously famous for that. But we don't have the backstop, that say, even though Logan Thompson isn't exactly a world beater, right now he is. And sometimes it's not just about how your team's playing, but it is about your goalie too. And I know, who's your starting goalie right now on the Sharks? Mackenzie Blackwood, and who's your other starter?
Well, we have Capo Kakinen, but he's
Right.
been injured. So
Right.
he's back skating. So I don't know who gets the start tomorrow. And then they brought up this kid who's a Denver graduate, Magnus Krona. He's up with the team right now. So it's, I mean, I don't know. Mackenzie Blackwood had a really strong start. Actually, both goaltenders have been okay. And then everything fell apart. So
yeah, it's hard,
to know where to place blame at this point. Just everything fell apart.
Well, and you guys have so much money on, like, hung up on LTIR. I didn't realize how much cap space you have on LTIR until I was actually, like, on the podcast yesterday, and I was like, oh no, I'm so sorry. Logan Couture in and of alone is what, $9 million on the cap? Oof.
Yeah, we don't know. And there's no timeline for his return either.
So. Right. Well, wishing him the best if you happen to see him. So let's get to some of the questions in the chat. So, Also, please, guys, if you're watching, please make sure you hit like and subscribe. Share this if you like it. If you happen to know a Joydrop fan, say, hey, I know a podcast that they were on earlier this night. The game is 4-1. The Dangerous. Oh gosh, based on what you saw tonight, would you make any immediate blue line trades or changes, or keep the roster and hope for the best?
No, I do. I think if anything needs shaking up, I mean, goaltending I think there's the potential for it to be solid, but obviously, like you were saying, Samsonov not playing well.
Mm-hmm.
The blue line is leaky. So, and I think this is a team where there's a lot of pressure to do something visible, make moves, maybe different than other markets. I don't know that the Leafs are ever given the grace of like waiting something out.
Yeah, the Leafs are nothing if not reactionary, right? Definitely a lot of like bouncing knees, knee-jerk reactions happening. I think most people probably want to fire John Klingberg into the sun.
Yes, they definitely do.
Has John Klingberg been a world beater? No, but this is kind of what we expected coming in.
I mean, it is. It's again, it's early, and this team has to find a way to knit together. Another question is going to be like how Treliving reacts, right? He's a different GM, so that's we'll see what they do. He may hang on.
He may,
but there's already right.
Yeah, I mean, again, because Toronto is under such a magnifying glass, and fair enough, like it is self-inflicted, right? Like we do this to ourselves. For goodness sake, the Leafs have a winning record, and we're sitting here being like, who do we need to trade on the blue line? But I think the Leafs right now, because they have so much money tied up in their core five. I'm not even going to say four because Morgan Riley is a part of that now. It seems like they have one hand on like the leaking side of the boat, and they only have 5 fingers to plug up the other holes. And every time they plug up one, okay, well now we have one good goaltender, but the other one's not doing well. Well, now, we still have a couple of good defensemen, but it's not what it was last year. And it seems like we're playing this kind of like, you're it's like you're playing bingo
Yeah.
with a constantly relighting card. Like it goes from one problem to another, and no team has no problems in the NHL. It's just the reality of it. And I do think that it's too early in the season to make a trade. Like, could they make a trade? Sure. Do they make a trade that's going to benefit them and they're going to win? Probably not. I don't see too many teams like lining up to help out Brad Treliving and his new team of the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? Like, even if you were to
No,
go,
I don't think anybody wants to help the Leafs
no,
ever.
I mean, at the best of times, no one wants to help the Leafs, let alone when they're losing. That's what most of the league likes to see, is them lose. And so I think, to answer your question from the chat, I do think it's too early to move anybody. I think that there is a chance, like you said, Tara, at the beginning of the stream, that all of these players have a resurgence and they turn around and their whole season picks back up, right? Like, we got another 70 games to go here, folks, before the end of the season, before we even get to the playoffs. So let's not jump off the Titanic while she's still mostly above water. Let's try and stay on the boat as long as possible.
I like it.
SDPN, do you keep Knies on the top line? Yes.
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 Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, that looked good.
He's been the best look that they've had so far on that line this season. And it's just playing nice and simple. Don't overcomplicate it. I feel like, again, I don't know how many of the Leafs games you've watched. I know you said you followed loosely, but it seemed like when Tyler Bertuzzi was on the line with Matthews and Marner, he was trying too hard, not even like gripping his stick too hard, just trying to make too many complicated plays.
Right.
But the small plays that he made tonight, like he goes in front of the net, he takes out, I think it was Anthony Cirelli, and then they go into the corner and he's holding his stick in such like a smart, clever way so that he can't access the puck, but he doesn't get a holding call, right? He's not actually doing anything bad. And then bing, bang, boom, and the Leafs score right away. So I think that line has looked the best that it has so far this season. I think that if Keefe does anything but staple him to the left side of Austin Matthews, then there are probably going to be a long fan of Leaf fans outside of the Ford Performance Center ready to ask him some very tough questions.
Yeah, the line's not changing anytime soon.
No, definitely not. And I think that it's pretty clear after today that even though we're trying to do a tandem thing, I don't know if Samsonov is really what we want him to be. Didn't look great.
And that, I mean, listen, that can also turn around. A lot of that stuff is mental. And, we've seen careers absolutely do 180s. I can't imagine anything harder, frankly. Once you start getting into your own head, that was a Jack Campbell problem.
Yeah.
It's still a Jack Campbell problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But yes, and listen, if you have a solid starter and the tandem thing is pretty new.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a solid starter who can play a lot of your games, great.
Yeah.
You have to have that person.
Right. And you have to have a coach that's willing to play that person and give them a string of games.
Yes.
So far this season, it seems like it doesn't seem like Keefe has kind of gone 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, nice and even. And in the games where even the Leafs have lost, but Joseph Woll's played, they've looked significantly better than they do in front of Samsonov. Again, I don't know if that's just like a confidence thing. Maybe they grip their sticks a little too tight and they're trying to overthink everything when Samsonov is in net. But like Samsonov, like you said, it's 100% possible that he turns around and turns into a world beater. Like, it is possible. Last season, he had a couple stretches of games where he was really solid. Was he someone that's going to get you a shutout every night? No. Might he steal you a game every now and then? Sure. He's not going to steal you a series, though. But tonight, after you watch the first 15 minutes of Ilya Samsonov play, and then you watch the second 2/3 of the game where Joseph Woll has played, as someone that's watched hockey for a long time, what do you see as the difference between those two players?
Oh God, I don't think I watched closely enough to know that. I don't think I was paying attention to Woll's body language enough. So you tell me.
Fair enough.
I mean, yeah.
He just looks a lot calmer. He looks like he's in a better position. He doesn't look like he overreacts. It seems again to me, as just a fan, that someone watches probably too much hockey. It seems like Ilya Samsonov has to move a lot more to correct the ongoing mistakes that he's making when he's playing. Whereas Joseph Woll, like when he butterflies out, he completely covers the bottom of the net. It's wild how good he looks when the puck is behind the net there's no hesitation. He has his double stack down across the line and is just like, nope, I'm just going to hang out here. So that's really good to see.
Well, and if you're noticing that, I mean, obviously that's what they're going to be working on, him being out of position and just not being centered and being frenetic.
Yeah.
But
someone's gonna strap a bungee to the back of that guy's jersey. Someone in the chat, bench Bertuzzi, he looks lost, not even playing or skating like an NHL player. Is he injured? It's an interesting question. Is he injured? I think to some degree all hockey players are at least injured at some point all the time. He started off the season injured, and there hasn't really been any remedies for that, and he hasn't played great since. Does he get benched? I don't know. Who would you take out of the? You're gonna bench a $5.5 million player. It needs to either be for an injury or because someone's being moved. Because I can't imagine with somebody that's already struggling, benching them is going to help in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, yes, if he's hurt, it's one thing. If he's, I mean, the only reason to healthy scratch somebody is, if their work ethic isn't up to snuff, and that's, that is sure, maybe that's it. Mm-hmm. It's hard to say, but yeah, he is too high a price tag player. You need him to start. Can we swear?
Yeah.
On this?
Let her rip.
Shit or get off the pot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
But yeah, you're right. If he's not if he's not contributing though, and he is injured, you got to get him out because it's not helping anything.
Yeah.
He may be hurting himself further.
And maybe even hurting the team. I don't think it would be a stretch to say that his play so far has been hurting the team. Definitely.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a stretch by any means. And I think everybody would agree with you. If anybody has any more questions, I think we're probably going to wrap up the stream here. Tara, thank you for coming on today. It was such a joy to have you on. If you do not follow Tara Slone on Twitter, first of all, how dare you? Second of all, make sure you follow her. Make sure you go check out her podcast, The Undercurrent. It is available wherever you watch or listen to all of your podcasts. Obviously, you can find Tara on Twitter, like I said, following the Sharks. She is works with NBC as well for the Sharks. And so even though I wish kind of that in hindsight we could have brought you in for a Sharks game, but realistically, probably wouldn't have been possible, right? You're probably super busy, even if they're on the road, I'm guessing?
It depends. My schedule is kind of all over the place, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, fair enough.
But the game when the Leafs are here, I'm definitely working.
Right. Well, have a great time with that. I hope the Leafs let you have a win because I actually feel kind of bad that we haven't been able to talk about any of the similarities between the Sharks and Leafs because unfortunately I don't really think there's that many so far in this season, but it's still early. No. There's still time for the Sharks to make the playoffs. Listen, anybody can win in November. So like I said, thank you for watching Game Over. My name is Lauren. You can find the wonderful Tara Slone on the other hand of the screen on Twitter. Please make sure you follow both of us everywhere you go. And thank you for coming on. Have a great night, everybody. Leafs win 6-5 over Tampa Bay. Callie Yarncroke with the dagger. Suck it, Tampa. Have a good night, everybody.